Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. This is Theo, your host for the episode. Now, joining us on the show today is Andrew Morris, founder and CEO of the FinTech Agenda, Chief Content Officer for Fintech Islands, and the first Chief Content Officer for Money 2020, etc., etc., etc. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Theo. It's great to be able to talk to you in this context. We've known each other a long time, but first time to be on the podcast. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you for spending time. Indeed, we have known each other for quite a few years. I still remember out of the blue, I got an email from you. It's been quite a few years now. When you were still Money 2020, I was like, wait, how do you know me? This is odd. I was still kind of figuring out my way around, and there you were. You
Yeah.
reached out, and I am forever grateful for that. It was my first experience at Money 2020.
Well, that was
That
some
was a
interesting.
while ago.
You were as surprised to be at Money 2020 as I was. I think it's sort of good things can happen almost by accident. I guess we make our own happy accidents, but I attended the first Money 2020 in 2012. Saw that Google was sponsoring a payments conference, and well, that's interesting. At the time, that really stood out as something different. And I was a management consultant in the payments industry, and okay, I'll go to this event, right? And really enjoyed the experience and decided I should speak at this event next year because I'll help, it'll be great to generate some clients for our consulting practice. And sent in a proposal to speak and got a call back from Anil Agarwal and Sanjeev Kalita. So Anil is one of the co-founders in Money 2020, and Sanjeev has been a dear friend since that phone call, who was also kind of on the founding team. And my proposal was to do a panel with retailers about their perspective on payments, right? So, but I got to know them through speaking and being at the event. And Matt Harris, the VC, was going to host a big startup thing on the main stage and had to leave the last minute and couldn't do the second day. And they asked me to step in, and I just built a relationship with them. And got the offer after the event. They said, would you be interested in joining our team? We're growing the team. It's a startup business running this event. We need someone to run content. And we really like what you did in helping us with your session. And not something I'd ever consider doing, but I'm so happy that I did because I really kind of fell in love with the creativity of building that event, the way that you could look very big picture at the industry and think about, kind of macro level trends and how they all fit together. The people that I was able to meet, the hundreds and thousands of people that you talk to and putting together an event like that and what you learn from them and the impact that we could have on the industry and how you see people's careers develop and companies get funded and businesses partner and all kinds of exciting things happen. And that, the event that you helped create had something to do with all of that magic. And so, but yeah, and so I sort of accidentally became a Money 2020 guy and then had to go find interesting people to be a part of the event. And so I reached out to you. So that's how that happened. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is funny. I didn't know the other part of it. That was cool. I just thought, which actually brings me to the question, because I often wonder, how do people fall into the role that they're in, right? As
Right.
you mentioned, you talked about, just by pure happy accident
Right.
that, you were there and you ended up meeting the team, which, by the way, I had not met a lot of the people for a while now. That the space has changed so much. I
Right.
love what you said though about creating impact, about creating the opportunities for people to propel from there. When we think about content, we think about creating events, we think about bringing communities together. How has that changed? I do wonder because, there's
Right,
still all these big anchor shows, right? But it
right.
almost feels like it's changing as well.
Well, of course, I mean, it's changing a lot. I mean, if you, if we time machine back 10 years ago, fintech was still fairly new, right?
Mhm.
Kind of a nascent new thing. We brought up, Bitcoin didn't even show up until a couple years into the event, and you had people like Brian Armstrong and Vitalik Buterin on a side stage in the corner, right? Which is crazy to think about now, right? Those are very important people.
Mhm.
Those are the Elon Musks of crypto, and they would not be in the corner. But so the industry was new, and the event was new, and when an event is new, the content and the speakers and all that plays a really important role in establishing the community, right? Because you're bringing together the investors and the startup founders and the bankers and the regulators and all the different people that build that community. And that's what was happening in the early days at Money 2020 was building the community. So I felt like the role that I played as the head of content was a really important part of establishing that. Um, Once then, when the industry starts to get more mature, like it is today, and the event's more mature, it maybe starts to feel a little more corporate. It's a little different, but it's just this, self-sustaining big gathering of people. And the content that is at Money 2020 is still great. The people that are there do a great job, but it's not as central to why people go. They go because everyone in the industry is there, and and in 3 days you can do as many meetings as you would in 3 months if you didn't have everybody in the same place, right? With FinTech Islands, that we'll talk about more later, the event I'm doing now, it's another thing where it's new, right? And bringing the speakers and the content is a part of building that community again. So I'm enjoying taking on that challenge again. And of course, the pandemic caught us all by surprise and sort of changed everything and changed how we view about travel and the need to meet in person with people. But I think it's interesting that it didn't take very long for the major events to get back and have that same energy. I think there's still a need for people to get together in person. Yeah.
I agree. That's how I felt. I think I got a little bit more selective in where
Yeah.
I go and where I spend my energy, but at the same time, I needed to meet people, right? It's like, all right, we've been behind the screen long enough. I was actually at home for almost 3 whole years, and it was interesting. It was different. I felt like we went through a pendulum of initially, yeah, you know what, we can all make it work. We all be behind the screen, and perhaps it could actually level the playing field, if you will, especially with regards to funding and startup ecosystem. And then after 2 years, we realized, wait a minute, this is not working. First of all, humans are creatures that we crave each other's company.
Right.
And the more we stay behind the screen, the more we became sort of like retreated back to the people that we knew before the pandemic, the people that we felt comfortable with, the circles that we had always been socializing in. And it defeated the original intent of perhaps leveling the playing field. I don't think we did at all. But it's interesting to see how that
Yeah.
evolves. And I love your concept of the destination. I think we talked about it a while before the show.
Right.
Having a destination and creating a different experience, if you will.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing I think the pandemic did is like, let's not waste our time. Let's be efficient with how we use our time, right? Gosh, we didn't realize how, these video calls became very common, right? And we can almost imagine having, a series of conference calls that don't involve seeing people's faces and their body language and this is really efficient and I can use my time. So the emergence of the conferences that facilitate one-on-one meetings and do it in speed dating, efficient, like FinTech Meetup and others that have done this really well. I think that's somehow, in some ways an output from the pandemic that, hey, wandering around an exhibit hall and passing out branded pencils doesn't seem very efficient of my time. If I need to meet certain people, how can you help me efficiently do that? But it's not all about efficiency. There's also relationships that we're trying to build, right? And that we need to build to be successful in our businesses and our careers. And there's just no substitute for sharing an experience in person with people, whether it's an event or a meal or a cultural event like we have at the Fintech Islands. And then all the communications you have with that same person after that just take on they just feel different. Like I really know this person. I was with them for a while. And it's interesting though, I did have a couple of business partners that I worked on event projects with that I met online during the pandemic, uh, worked on a whole project together, had known them, it's been like a year and a half, and I'd been known this person and they'd been my friend and business partner. And we'd never been in the same physical room, right? So it's possible to do that, but I think it's more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think if anything, 2023 was a year of, wow, I finally met someone in person,
Yeah.
kind of feeling that we didn't have before. Now, I want to go back down to memory lane a little bit. We
Yeah.
talked a little bit about how you started,
Yeah.
being the king of creating content and convening communities. If we were to look back at what's happened in the last 10 years or so, anything caught you by surprise?
Well, I think a lot of things. I mean, just one thing is just how quickly fintech has become a really established, industry. We weren't scrappy startups as an industry very long, right? The fact that the startups that cross their stage, the stripes and, are,
Hmm.
the the level of yeah, that happened maybe faster than I thought it would, right? And so that's really interesting. I don't think I expected Money 2020 to become as big of a business as it did as quickly. Right? I knew that I was joining something exciting and that the founders were brilliant and that this is going to be great. But I didn't know we would, have 3 different events around the world and it would become such a huge thing. Um, and it surprised me how that changed my perspective in my own personal career. I think that that's the biggest observation is just how quickly we went from, hey, we've found all the cool startups in this brand new space and put them in a room, to this is an industry, right? And that it happened in 3 or 4 years. As
Yeah.
Money 2020 doubled in size, from 2,000 to 4,000 to 8,000 to, over the first 3 or 4 years, that same period of time was reflective of the industry reaching maturity very, very, very quickly. And we can say it's still early days because it probably is, right? There's still a lot of exciting things to come, but people that I talk to in casual conversations that are not involved in fintech know what fintech is. Right? That would not have been the case, 10 years ago.
Very, very true. I
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing, as you were talking about the stripes of the world and whatnot, um, they didn't stay startup too long either, right? And here we are. Even last year, we were talking about what exactly is a fintech startup. A
Right.
lot of these companies are so huge and they are moving so much money, number of transactions around. They are occupying a very central position in people's lives. Are they really still startups, or is it time to basically banish the word fintech startup? Is PayPal a startup, for example? I'd say probably not. They're kind of big.
Yeah,
Where do
yeah.
you draw the line?
It is kind of strange, yeah, because when you think of anybody that's, high tech and in Silicon Valley is a startup, well, maybe not if they're Google and Apple and PayPal and, not quite startup status, but No,
It is a fun industry. I would add, we see a lot of cycles that come and go. I remember when I first started dabbling in the space, people were talking about, oh, how fintechs will eat the bank's lunch. And then it became how Amazon um, will eat the bank's lunch. And we see these cycles of hype come and go, the themes come and go and evolve. And I think it'll be really interesting to see where it goes next, because there's no lack of buzzwords. But when it comes to the original premise of why fintech exists, we want to do something different. We want to actually help
right,
change people's
right,
lives or create different opportunities for them to go from one to the other that they couldn't go with the traditional structure. Have we really achieved what we said we would? I would argue not yet. We have made a lot of things pretty.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting in thinking about all the trends over the years. Like you forget, like we all kind of accept how the ecosystem has evolved and what it looks like today. But it's easy to forget how uncertain it was when Money 2020 started or when fintech was early, right? We were trying to figure out, well, who is going to own mobile payments in the US? Was it going to be driven by the banks? Going to be driven by the retailers? Going to be driven by, Apple and Google? And it's Apple and Google, right? Of course it's Apple and Google, Apple Pay. That's what it is. But that was very unclear. We had mobile operators like AT&T and Verizon speaking at the FinTech conference that were going to be these big players in the future of payments. So it's not as obvious, if you forget all the things that have kind of transpired along the way to get us to where we are. I think the path we're on now, I think, obviously AI is going to hugely affect our world in all aspects, and that will be true for financial services as well. And then I think kind of all flavors of this topic of open finance and because that's about sharing data and interoperability and how fintechs partner with banks, which is another maybe a surprise that fintechs were going to eat the banks, right? But now we're partnering, and how that all fits together to provide experiences for consumers that create more inclusivity and opportunity and access. And one of the things, I think you and I share this, one thing that really appeals to me about the fintech industry is so much of it is about serving, people who were underserved, or small businesses who were underserved prior, and how we can create more access and opportunity. And many of the founders that I met, working on events over the years, wanted to have successful businesses and wanted to have them be financially successful. But what was really driving them was some mission that they wanted to serve. It was about the mission. It wasn't about the money, right? And I don't know that I had really seen that in my prior work, as as a banker and a consultant, but I really started to feel it when I was dealing with founders of startups in this space.
I do agree. I do agree. That's the one thing that attracts me to the industry. It's frustrating. It's terribly frustrating because sometimes you look at it like we have people with the right intent, we have people with the right intention to change the world, but yet to actually get there, there are so many hurdles that it just feels like is one after another after another. But is the people that keeps trying, that keeps the industry going. And I hope we can continue to do more of that. The other interesting thing I've noticed is how different regions evolve differently. You mentioned a little earlier about mobile network operators, because that's the industry I came from, MNOs. And when we look at how different players get involved in quote unquote the movement of money and payments, it is very different in the United States versus how it is in Africa, for example,
Sure.
versus
Yeah.
how it is in China, right? It's different flavors.
And the timings are different, and regions develop differently in different timing, and so they leapfrog past steps that we had in the U.S. that you just go right past them to the next thing. In other parts of the world, we don't have cards. What are cards? Let's go straight to phones. With M-Pesa in Africa. So it's interesting. So after Money 2020, I was there until the 2019.
Hmm.
Never made it actually to the year 2020. I left before I got, but still was involved in events. It was right before the pandemic, and worked on some interesting projects with virtual events, and that was kind of interesting. And then early last year, got introduced by one of my former colleagues at Money 2020, who actually was originally from Trinidad, to the founders of this event called FinTech Islands. And and so one of the things I'm doing now is working as the head of content and one of the principals for this event, FinTech Islands, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks in Barbados. Before I was introduced to that opportunity, I'd not been to the Caribbean at all, not even on vacation, right? I hadn't gone on a cruise or something, right? So I didn't know anything about the region really, right? But I've had the great opportunity to learn about the culture of the region, the differences and nuances between all the different islands that make up the Caribbean islands, the talent that's there, the creativity that's there, the issues that are being addressed in terms of adoption of fintech. The pandemic really brought that out for them. That it's still very much catch-based society more than other parts of the developing world. So it was highlighted by the pandemic how much digital transformation needed to occur in that part of the world to create opportunities for businesses and individuals. And the founders of FinTech Islands recognized that and said, "Hey, we can give back by hosting an event that's a global event that would help to be a catalyst for the fintech ecosystem in this part of the world." So when you're kind of alluding to different parts of the world developing different ways, I'm learning about one of those places in kind of the Caribbean and where it connects into Latin America. And it's been exciting to be a part of building an event there.
So why Barbados?
So in this case, so FinTech Islands is not a Barbados event, but it's founded by Allison Hunt
Hmm.
and Kurt Rasan, who are both Bayesian. They were born, raised in Barbados, live in Miami now, have developed their career and moved to the U.S. and go back and forth. Allison is brilliant at producing big events and experiences, but in the past they've been music events. She manages music talent and hosted big music festivals. Kurt is a technologist. He runs technology for a big cruise line. So they're not founders from the fintech space, but they, along with another friend that had a fintech background and then bringing me in, launched this event. Um, and so it started in Barbados because that was home turf for them. And it's a very interesting, beautiful place, close proximity to Latin America. Trinidad nearby has a pretty active fintech community and enough population to support that. But our intention is to move the event around and to so it'll probably be in Jamaica and Bahamas and other locations in future years because it's about the Caribbean ecosystem, not about specifically Barbados. Barbados is lovely, though. The people there are, uh, you know, it's got this quaint quality about it. Everyone's so lovely and well educated, and it's a great place to do this event. A little difficult to travel to, but it's a great place to have the event. Yeah.
I look forward to it. I've never been to Barbados. I've been to the Caribbean islands. That's actually where I got married, in
Mhm.
St. John, but I've never been to
Yeah.
Barbados. So I am very curious to see how it looks like, as I've heard you rave about it for so long now. So
Yeah.
what can we expect from the event?
Well, so a couple things on Barbados. Of course, one thing that everybody knows is Rihanna, right? So let's get that Rihanna is like, sort of the unofficial queen of Barbados. Um, but the other powerhouse, maybe even more so, is the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Mia Mottley punches way above her weight on the global stage around financial inclusion issues and very specifically about climate issues. And there's something called the Bridgetown Initiative that's been pioneered by Prime Minister Motley and her team. It's a new way of looking at development finance to try to get private industry involved so that poorer countries can have the finance they need for the energy transition. It's always this roadblock. Wealthy countries say, well, you're not doing your part in the energy transition, and the poor countries say, well, we don't have the money, give us the money. And the rich countries say, well, we can't give you the money. So it's a really innovative way to get private industry involved. So the Prime Minister made remarks at the event last year, and we're hopeful she'll be able to join us again this year. We're waiting to get that confirmation from her. But the event itself, it's a 3-day conference, January the 24th to the 26th, to Wednesday through a Friday. It's very much about the content, learning, and about networking. It's not a big exhibit hall type event. There are a few exhibitors, but it's more about having shared experiences and meeting other people. The first year event had about 400 attendees. We're trending to be above that quite a bit this year, maybe 600 or more people at the conference. So there's enough scale to have a lot of people there, but small enough to really be able to meet everyone that you'd want to meet over the 3 days. The attendance is about 2/3 from the Caribbean and the rest from Latin America, US, Europe, the west part of Africa, Ghana, Nigeria. So very much a global event. And then the speaker lineup, and Theo, you are one of our featured speakers. Very excited that you'll be there. About half of the speakers are from outside of the Caribbean, and so some of the more senior people that are there speaking on the agenda. So it's a global community, and it's been interesting for me to see people that I've invited to the event in prior years spend more time in the region since then. Right, they've made connections and gotten interested in what's happening there, and which is exactly what we want to happen. Right, we want this to be a catalyst for that. We've organized the agenda into 9 different thematic deep dives covering open finance and innovation in payments and banking, AI, digital assets. Climate is an important topic for us at the event, so looking at climate, fintech. But I haven't listed them all, but there are 9 of those deep dive tracks. Main stage sessions, fantastic social events that really bring the culture of the place into the experience of the event. First evening, there's a party at the Prime Minister's residence with, great reggae music, and it's great fun. And then the second day of the event, in the afternoon, we get people out on tours of the island in other groups, smaller groups of people from the event. So it's what we talked about with those making connections. And you're spending a few hours doing something fun together, but you're also talking about, well, what do you do? What company are you with? And building those relationships. And so it's by design that we do it that way. And then on the last day of the event, we feature a startup pitch program for 10 early stage companies, all Caribbean founders, and giving them a showcase and an opportunity to win some cash prizes. And we've done some mentoring sessions with those companies before the event. So, the attendees are bankers, they are fintech founders and their teams, investors, policymakers, including central banks, ministers of finance, etc. And so it's a really, well-balanced group around fintech at the conference. Yeah.
I like what you said about making connections and connecting people from different places. That's always been one of the things I wish we could do more when we go to conferences, especially things that are in downtown. What do people do? They pop in, they pop out. They go spend an hour or two, and then they disappear. The ability for people, especially people who are new in the industry, to make decent connections and have conversations is impossible because people literally, they're just everywhere. And by bringing people from different places together and putting them together intentionally, that's how we can facilitate exchanges. And I think that's how we can make the ecosystem more vibrant and more interesting. So kudos.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. And it's like it's real easy to say, "Oh, you're going to the Caribbean, bring your sunscreen, lucky you," right? Like it's a boondoggle, and believe me, you'll have a lovely time, right? In Barbados, it's a beautiful place. But this is a very sort of authentic gathering, right? The attendees are coming there because they want they have a mission around their company. They want to learn that like this is not just a destination wedding, right? This this is an authentic thing, and we're having it in the Caribbean because it's about the Caribbean, and it just happens to be a beautiful part of the world, right? But we're at this new property called Sam Lord's Castle. It's a new resort, so you're oceanfront and an all-inclusive setting, and it's beautiful. But there's the conversation is about financial inclusion and climate and things that really are important and matter. Yeah. So, but it should be a great 3 days. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, before I let you go, I do want to ask you if you can host an event anywhere in the world, where would that be?
So here's my answer, and I am so passionate about this, and it might surprise you. I live in Atlanta, and the event would be in Atlanta. And it's not so much that it would be in Atlanta, because I have other events that I've done that are in Atlanta. It's the type of event, and eventually this will happen. So stay tuned. This is a wonderfully diverse city, Atlanta, and it's also a pretty strong technology hub and a fintech. You've got South by Southwest. Why not South by Southeast? But I think there's a great opportunity to the way that we combine culture and music and the place and all of that with Fintech Islands in the Caribbean to do something similar with the culture of Atlanta with music and movies and food and the legacy of civil rights and all of that. And do a fintech event here that's about these kind of mission driven ideas, and to also have it be really a culturally rich kind of thing where you can enjoy music in the place. So so that's something I'd really love to do. I didn't grow up in Atlanta, but I've lived here for 25 years, and my whole career in the fintech space has been while I've been here. I'd love to do an event right here in the ATL.
Wow.
Uh,
That indeed is a surprising answer, because you have hosted different events, including FinTech South,
right, right.
right in Atlanta as well. So
Right.
I look forward to seeing you growing and expanding your dream. And Atlanta would be much easier to get to.
It will be. It will be. Well, maybe we'll see you twice a year. We'll see you in the Caribbean and in Atlanta. We'll work that out.
We'll work on that. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for talking about what drives your passion and giving us a little bit of tidbit about FinTech Islands. I do look forward to seeing you finally in person after so long.
And,
So appreciate it.
well, wonderful. And it's not too late for people to make that decision to travel to see us. So it would be great to have some last minute guests pop up and join us in Barbados.
Especially in deep winter. My
I
goodness.
know. I
Where
know.
else would you rather be, right? So
I know. Thanks so much, Theo. I enjoyed it.
thank you, Andrew. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. We will talk to you all next week.